And there's still people who I'm yet to apologize to, or just to say thank you. I know you were trying. You had such an amazing impact on my life, and I didn't fucking see it because I was so consumed by my own suffering and being an alcoholic, in my opinion.
Oh, that's a good one. A different culture, different ideologies.
Mental health is really important.
Be like I was in my 30s, and I had exuberant energy.
Definitely be more introspective and be brave in looking.
Boom, man. That's. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Strong, Happy, Healthy, Loved podcast. My name is John Reynolds, and this is the podcast where we're talking about mental health awareness, community connections around positive self-talk. And I'm very honored today to be joined by Dan Ewing, well-known Australian leading man. You'll remember him from Heath Braxton from Home and Away, and been nominated for Best New Talent, Most Popular Male Actor. He's gone on to do international films now as well. Analyst for the NBL in basketball, and among a lot of other accomplishments, which I trust we'll get a chance to discuss today. Dan, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Oh, brother, it's I'm so grateful to be here with you. And can I just say off the top, and for any of your amazing fan base that hasn't seen this, it's just to see you now and how this platform and what you've been able to accomplish and share with your other guests. I know you remember, but I remember that first video where you literally just did a video post on your Facebook, just saying, "This is me. This is something I've always struggled with." And now look at you. You're Joe Rogan.
Well, we're not quite. I don't think we'll see Donald Trump and Mark Zuckerberg, but yeah, look, it's nice to be in that conversation and to create a platform.
Yeah.
And I've always been very mindful of the psychology, the mental health. You've been very good at promoting health and supporting people. So thank you for your generosity.
No worries, mate.
We'll certainly, get to some of these focuses on that.
For sure.
On this journey. But I want to take you back to growing up in Manly. Young Dan, talk me through some of those formative years and some of the memories that you have growing up.
Yeah, so I was born in Manly Hospital. I grew up in a little suburb called Forestville, just near Frenchs Forest, Roseville in Sydney's north. The eldest of four, so that comes with its own sort of interesting sort of paradigms and sort of things that get ingrained into you. It's weird now because people think, oh, Dan was a pretty good athlete. I was terrible. I kind of hit this weird barrier when I was 12 and kind of grew into my body. But as a child, yeah, I was pretty quiet. I certainly wouldn't say lonely. I was definitely cheeky. I think my beautiful kindergarten teacher, my family always references, I could have done anything. Like I remember swinging off branches and breaking trees, and my poor mother had to come and replant a tree at primary school. But my beautiful Mrs. Dean always says Dan was spirited. So it's funny now with the meaning and like now understanding what being spirited is in the spiritual realm and all that sort of stuff. But it was a great. I'm so fortunate for that upbringing because it really formed who I am today. Now there are certain things in my childhood that like I see other families, like so. My little girl's mum, Katrina, she's European, so like I literally thought her uncles were arguing. They were just talking about a bike ride down to Wollongong. In that sort of Anglo-Saxon family, sort of dad would come home, mum worked nights. So I was, like I said, oldest of four. I don't know how anyone can afford four kids these days, but let's not digress there. So it's very come, sit down, not a lot of sort of emotional discussion and talking because it just wasn't the way. And again, we were always felt loved. It wasn't like a household, there was no love, but there wasn't that thing that I love now with my kids and the sharing and all that sort of stuff. I could sense in my teens that my parents, like there was a bit of a rift there. I can't recall any sort of, again, might have been too young, any screening matches, but there was that sort of divide with no communication. And now we're in a time where people, it's like they're in and out of marriages like it's nothing. But the breakdown of that, relationship, seeing how that evolved, how that affected my relationship with my father and how that affected me later in life, being the eldest, not being able, feeling that I had no one to turn to if I couldn't turn to my father, then being in the public eye, and I have to own the responsibility there. And I'm sorry to digress a little bit, but it does lead into where I am at now. Not for whatever reason, whether it's being in the public eye, not feeling you can trust people, trying to keep stuff in, that certainly drove me to some negative behaviors later. By the way, this is not me saying this is my parents' fault at all, but I can certainly see that lack of communication within that household, and that then affected me later on. My mother's no longer with us. For people who don't know, she passed away in 2021. Didn't really drink. I don't know I'm sure if you met my mother, John, but like she would have to have ice cubes in her glass of wine because she'd get a hangover. She had more than three. But a science background. So, and then dad's an accountant and a great athlete himself, and he's got a lovely partner that we certainly consider part of the family. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a nutshell. Sorry to crap on. I went to an all boys school, and then that sort of led me into the acting field. I think I got put on detention to be in a musical the first time. So I certainly never saw it as a career, and just fell in love with it. You know, as an athlete, and I say this with no insult to anybody, but back then the word gay was used as a derogatory term. Oh, that's gay, that's gay, that's gay. And you're almost defending your sexuality being an athlete and loving musicals until, you know, the basketball boys and swimming boys and all the rugby fellas come and watch the musicals that we did with a neighbouring girls' school in North Sydney called Monte St. Angelo. And this is back in the days where it's very different. It's like, where do the girls get changed? There. Where do you get changed? There. All right. You know, so it kind of leads you into this path and sort of led me down the path of falling in love with the business.
No, thank you. I mean, it certainly shapes the narrative, and
Yeah.
I find that people start to give us an insight is how their perception of it is.
Yeah.
And I guess looking, you know, sort of being the conduit for your parents and your siblings, sometimes the onus is on you. It's like, come on, Dan, you need to step up. You need to be a good role model for you. So the focus is already on you. So you probably learned to be quite aware of performing a certain way when certain people were around.
Yeah.
And again, performing for your peers, you know, trying to create this strong front that's going to be acceptable and manageable through life. And I see sometimes we're already kind of preloaded that when we step into a certain world that we have these kind of backstops to prepare us.
Well, it's funny how the cultural stuff is. And again, I'm assuming a lot of your amazing sort of listeners and viewers have done a bit of reading on the subject matter, but all that the paradigm and the programming that goes in before the age of 7, that is a very real thing. So it's funny, you catch yourself out either speaking like one of your parents or your grandparents, or I always find it funny when you're watching people sort of walk. I think someone made a comment. My dad flew up to Brisbane, it's a new city, Brisbane to visit me. And I think my younger brother, who was with us also, he commented that Dad and I have the same gait, and Dad's a fair bit shorter than I am. But it is fascinating, even just watching you, and now the growth of your boys. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like it's funny how as they grow and hit different stages of their body, the jawline changes. Oh, I see more John, I see more Dan than their mums. You know, it's fascinating.
Well, and certainly it's that role modeling. And I think a lot of that's unconscious. And even though we want to be seen, hey, I don't want to be like that, I don't want to do this, you're certainly aware under pressure or in an emotional state, we can revert. So if you had parents that yelled, that will be the natural state in conflict is to yell, is to kind of role model that. You know, I know with the time growing up that I don't remember it, but I become very much like my dad and get aggressive and get loud as that's a way to be heard. Yeah. And I think that's a real masculine trait, is to sort of try to stand over or be assertive in that regard.
And you and I, sorry to interrupt you, and you and I have a very similar sort of athletic background. Apart from, I never did bodybuilding, mate. I apologize. I could never.
You love the gym, so you
mate, I couldn't get up there in the red dick stickers and make them look good the way you did, my good friend. No. But as an athlete, and this is something I struggle with, and please, I'd love to hear your opinion on this, especially when you start going through things, whether it's in the film industry or life or the public eye, when you've had an athletic background and you and I played at a really high level of basketball, I would turn, like you said, that it's more like, and I didn't see it as aggression. It's really interesting you said the word aggression, because since all the work I've been doing on myself and my coach, Coach Holler at Men's Medicine. So what he said is, as athletes, we can go to a level of aggression that doesn't that we don't see as aggression. It's more just our default athlete competitiveness thing. But that can be a scary thing to some people, especially obviously in my case when there's like alcohol involved or some really sort of like negative feelings or depression and you're in a bad place. So can that attitude towards life in the film industry, sporting attitude be great? Sure. But you've got to be able to control those levels of, like, well, for me in particular, you control those levels of aggression and competitiveness so they're not a detriment to your life and your decision making. I hope that makes sense, and
Yeah,
I'm sure you
absolutely.
feel something similar with your sporting background.
Well, I think it's that level when you're free to perform a certain way, and you have this level of aggression or competitiveness that I like to call it. So
Yeah,
whenever somebody's coming at me, there's a certain level you're either going to step back or you're going to step in,
yeah,
and a lot of that becomes emotional regulation and a sort of sense of how well can you handle pressure.
yeah,
And I certainly, that's something that's very important when it comes to mental health, is how much pressure that we can put on ourselves. Now, are we able to have a valve to release that, or do we use coping mechanisms? Is there other addictive or vices that kind of suppress that? And we've certainly seen in the film and television industry or the arts, Robin Williams, Philip Seymour Hoffman, some of these people who are incredibly creative and they're on all the time. So how do we learn to just step back? How can we just be, Dan, the father or the partner, or is it just
yeah.
John just with his friends instead of being on and that focus? So, I mean, when did you start to notice for you that you were starting to step up in those levels of like I said, being in productions, you had a passion and that starts to grow. So when did you start to see that potentially the film or the television industry had a path for you to kind of follow?
Honestly, it was my first day on set as an extra. So I was for everybody at home. So one of the most iconic roles I'm known for in Australia, anyway, is Heath Braxton on Home and Away. Before then, I actually did a guest character called Reuben Humphreys. Great name, even better haircut. But before that, I was an extra. I was playing basketball in the States, and I remember speaking to my cousin Michael at the time, and he was with an extras agency. He's actually he's a school teacher in Sydney now, but he said, "Mate, you did drama in high school instead of working. For back then, I'm about to turn 40. I think back then, whatever the minimum wage was, let's call it $9, $10 in a cafe, you can earn like $30 an hour walking along a beach with chicks in bikinis and you're getting fed." I'm like, say less, I'm in. But the why I fell in love with it, and this is so key, and I try to take this through. Chris Hemsworth and Isabel Lucas were sort of big stars on the show at the time, and obviously they've both gone on to do amazing things. They were so, apologies for the language, but I have to say they were so fucking lovely to me. And lovely to everybody, and I really absorbed that. I mean, I think in this game, you're like, especially as you rise, there's always going to be negotiations and disagreements and creative fists, and that's it because everybody cares, right? That's what I had to learn. It's because everybody cares. But because those two were so nice to me, and I just fell in love, and how jovial the crew was, and there's not a high turnover of crew on a show like Home and Away. That's how you know that it's such a great environment. And then the universe or God works in mysterious ways. I was the lead of a rom-com not too many years later with Isabel Lucas, So I think it was just falling in love with it, and you can attest to this as well. You fall in love with that creativity, and everyone's there because it is a weird little bubble. A film set, and you leave, and you've almost got to grieve it. I mean, I'm sure everyone's like, "Oh, last week, it's." Can't wait to finish this thing up and have the wrap party and actually get some sleep. I've been living on 2 hours sleep a night for a couple of months now, but I was hooked, and still to this day, even with all the any struggles I went through or any of the journey, what keeps bringing me back is that love for it. And I quite literally, even before I speak to you, I listen to movie soundtracks every single morning. So whether that's so Jurassic Park's my favorite one, just that instrumental. Da, 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 da. Everyone's heard the
We all
Jurassic
know
Park
it. Yeah.
soundtrack.
Yeah.
But it could be anything. Like when my son was little, it was I think it's Rascal Flatts, Life is a Highway, it was the Cars theme, and he would lose his mind. So that's in there. I don't have the Jaws theme. I thought that was a little sick. I've got a friend who's got the
Like
Predator.
preload you mentally of expecting
Yeah.
something, you know?
But just things like that connect me to that inner child. And it's now fascinating to see that through Archie's eyes. Archie was an extra on the new Mortal Kombat movie that's about to come out, that's shot on the Gold Coast. And he was in his kit and he's in this giant, film set, which obviously not all of the film sets are that giant. And this big sort of dystopian village that had burnt out. And he was a little slave and he had the best time of his life. And it reminded me in the first speaking role I booked, I did laps of my house, just losing my mind. And it was such a small speaking role. But the honest answer is, if I'm authentic with myself, if that came along now, obviously I'm at a different stage of my life, I'd probably turn the role down. But at that time, I was just in love with the magic and so grateful for it. So I every single morning connect to that kid, that young man who fell in love with making and watching movies. So that's something I do every single day.
That evolutionary process, I think when you are a dreamer or you can create
Mm,
vision for yourself and you go, man, I just want it one day on a film. That'd be so cool. And you get that
yeah,
one day and you're like, oh, I want another day.
yeah,
And then you see somebody getting a speaking role and you're like, oh, I want a line. And you get a line. Oh shit, I want a trailer now. Oh, I want more money in it. And the process goes up. And I guess for a lot of people, you know, in a position of growth and evolution, they get to that point going, man, wouldn't it be great if I was famous and rich and everybody knew what I did?
mhm,
And now that's a very narrow pathway that very few people are going to step into.
mm,
And then you've reached that. And I know I've spent time with you. And as we're sitting there, people are coming over and, hey, excuse me, I'm going to get a picture. And oh my God, and they see you as Heath and they refer to you because you've been in their home. So you're a possession.
mm,
The property of this person is the fact that they know you. And so this a feeling now where you've got to kind of distinguish between the public Dan and the
mm.
private Dan. Like, please talk me through some of the challenges,
Yeah,
because as much as it sounds like, oh, that'd be great, I don't think people kind of comprehend the responsibility. You're having a bad day, you've had some issues going on, and now you've got to flick the switch instead of telling them to F off or, oh my God, I can't believe it, he's like that. Oh my God, Dan. So
yeah.
this perception of you is I guess is twofold. So yeah, please.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny when you said the fuck off thing. I've never had to do that. Sometimes fans get a little bit full on, and luckily, I think one time there's a security guard there, so it was fine. But it's funny now. I'm the annoying one. I'm like a fan comes and asks, so I'm like, oh yes, how are you? What's your little boy? Oh great. What does he play sport? And they're like, I just want a photo, man. I prefer the connection rather than the signing. I don't know. It might be a getting older thing. But the honest answer is, mate, I really struggled. And when I say struggled, it was so big. The River Boys were the biggest thing ever, and I was the rat bag middle brother. I was in my mid-20s, so I was drinking and partying and doing all that sort of stuff more anyway. But I remember having a conversation with an old manager who will remain nameless because he's no longer with us, and just out of respect. But he's like, I remember, and this is a long time ago. So the older brother's the older brother. The middle one's really young, and you're the young, single, hot guy. And I even remember talking to him about him saying, you sure you want to appear that you're taken in your private life? There's all these weird conversations. So already there's pressure. And then the characters are so popular, and I found myself leaning in. But the key is I was just this, not to go back, but it helps sort of prove describe my point. Going back, I was just this kid from the Northern Beaches who happened to be a decent athlete in his teens, and that was kind of it. And I fell in love with this thing. Cut to then, even before the River Boys came on air, we were like, there were shopping center malls full just for signings with the promo. If anyone remembers, like there was this slow motion promo of myself, Lincoln, and Steve walking out of the water in board shorts, and there'd always these different voiceovers. It's like whatever. It's like there's a tornado. Could these three be responsible? There's a polar bear. Could these three be responsible? Someone else rear-ended someone. There was all these funny, but it went nuts. And then sort of just being in your mid-20s, you're going out and partying anyway. And at that stage, look, I certainly wasn't into to drugs. I'd never even smoked weed or anything like that in my life. But what I did end up doing with with the notoriety, like you said, like, so imagine being my former partner Marnie, heavily pregnant, having a drunk lady spill a cocktail, right? We weren't at a nightclub, we were at a restaurant about to go into a basketball game in Wollongong, and this lady's coming around, and I thought it was funny. I wasn't aggro at all, but I kind of was like, just relax, she's pregnant. But I look up and it's this poor husband holding the handbag, doing the old "I'm so sorry" thing. So there's that. But what I didn't realize I was doing was firing and wiring in my brain, and only now knowing that obviously, as you know, your brain's two primary functions are to keep you safe and to conserve energy. So I really struggled with that notoriety, and so did my former partner. And the fastest way to get rid of that, my brain told me, was glug, 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 right? At the time, it wasn't really that big a deal. But cut to going through a divorce in the public eye. And my best and worst parts of my life get played out in the public eye. That's what you sign up for. But cut to that, and you're not seeing your son, right? And everybody out there has probably been through a relationship breakdown, if not something quite similar. So if you're not seeing your child, and you're in this like really horrible emotional state, your brain goes, "Oh, you'll feel better, glug, glug, glug." And I've talked about this before. So my breakfast juice was red wine for a time there. And this is not something, and you read all the books. It's like, if your parents smoke, you're exponentially high percentage to smoke or drink. I didn't have that, so I'd read enough books, and I went in, and I think sometimes with things that get clipped up on the media, it's a bit more woo woo. But the first thing I did was go to a GP. Right. So Macca and Darren, I always talk about Macca and Darren. Macca and Darren, two hypothetical guys down the pub. If I go in and start talking about meditation or breath work, fuck, that's not my thing. Okay, well, can we talk about military snipers doing box breathing to lower their cortisol levels before they take out high value targets? LeBron James visualizes the whole game. After he's done his routine, his warm-ups, he sits there. Call it meditating, call it what you want. But learning how to correctly correctly deal with those pressures and cope with those pressures without glug, 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 or some people are addicted to sugar or sex, or people can quite literally be addicted to drama because the neurochemicals get released in your brain, which is fascinating. But to shorten it, I don't think I dealt with it as well as I could. And then, especially with alcohol, I noticed that going through times of stress, and we've been together on situations like this, I would not drink for 6 months, no problem, right? So when I go to the GP and I'm telling him all this, I'm like, man, alcoholic, complete alcoholic. It's like, I'm not saying like, this is what's happening, just this is what's going on. How can I fix this? I've read this. It's not learned behavior from my parents. Where has this come from? And he said, when did you start drinking a lot? I said, home and away. And he's like, okay, just tell me more about that. And I said, well, because I was just this kid, and I was obviously struggling with the pressure, but you mix that in with being like a normal 20-something-year-old who's out partying and leaning into it. So you can forgive that, but cut to going through that divorce in the public eye and feeling that suffering. I didn't know about breath work. Obviously knew that I felt better when I played basketball or went to the gym. But that wasn't my first go-to, because the neurons in my brain, because of that sort of time in my 20s, fire and wire, the fastest way to feel better was glug, glug, glug. And then that can start obviously having very negative impact on not only your life, but the people around you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I mean, it certainly gives, a certain amount of context to, everyone. I remember, coming off long film, we've been there for 6 months, and there's this great come down. And this restlessness and this boredom that somehow I just want to either numb it or fulfill it. And I've certainly had my own experiences with trying to come to terms. And it's not till I go down that path and recognize what I'm doing and how I'm treating other people and how damaging that is, that you can kind of bring it back. And obviously you've had your experience with that. So what do you find now when, you start to have those little registers of, yep, that's starting to fire up again? I mean, what's your kind of go-to? I know you
interestingly for me, so I reached the point where it was like this rock bottom. It was like the universe had said, we've given you enough warnings, mate. Slap, slap, slap. I don't know if you've ever had a similar experience, but it was like the whole, everything. It's like, it felt like every bill was loving up at the wrong time. You're kicking your toe. it's like it just felt like everything was sort of happening. And that's why I truly believe in frequency and vibration. Other people call it the law of attraction, but if everything is energy, right, and I'm acting in a negative way or I'm opening myself up, I believe alcohol steals from your soul. And I believe I manifested all these problems because it's who you're showing up, it's who you're being. It's not what you want. Who are you showing up? What are you being? A lot of actors, it's like, I want to be a global movie star and be The Rock. Well, are you in the gym at 4 a.m.? Are you working on your American accent? Are you showing up with those behaviors of the person you're wanting to become or choosing to become? Yeah, so for me, ownership was a huge part, because I hurt a lot of people, and I hurt myself in particular, and that was the hard part. Apologizing to other people was never a hard thing for me, but forgiving myself was hard. And again, that sounds like a selfish thing, perhaps to some people, but you cannot pour from an empty cup. And unless I really delve deep, like I'm talking like I was on the top of a mountain in Springbrook doing breath work, just trying to sort of reconnect to whatever we call this thing, God, the universe, the energy source that is scientific fact. Making that choice to go down the sobriety path and keep it up. But the key for me was ownership and responsibility. And I think what a lot of people do, and correct me, we've all done this. When you do the blame game, it's your fault. You get that little shot of dopamine and you kind of feel better for a little bit. But it's that owning and the responsibility that keeps the power here, and you feel better about it. Even though you may disagree, right, with what's happening or the situation, by blaming someone or pointing that finger, that's that old sporting analogy. You got the three fingers pointing back at you. By owning, it gave me what I can only call as transformational healing. And it was like, mate, I'm telling you, it was like a spiritual enema. I'm so sorry for how graphic this is. I feel like I was having a colonic on top of a rock, but feeling like I was cradled in the arms of the universe or God, literally lying down with my back on a rock, doing breath work with my coach and with some amazing sort of healing music and a didgeridoo above me. And it was just like, call it exercising demons or whatever it was, just that level of connection I'd never been to before. And then, it's acknowledging the responsibility of any people that you might have hurt, as it was reaching out to as many people as possible. And by the way, like so it could be anything from, being impatient with reps, loved ones, people who really tried to help you and care about you, that you pushed away, but you weren't ready to hear it yet because you weren't open, you hadn't hit that low point. I even sat down with my son, with drinking in particular, because like he's 10 and he started to see, oh, Daddy, you drinking again? And he'd start asking questions like that. And it was only when I sort of completely stopped and had just released so much trauma from my childhood and other stuff that I was able to sit down, look him in the eye, and I say man to man, because, we're going to blink, and like your boys, they're men almost, so I sat down and I said, Daddy is never, ever touching a drop of alcohol ever again. I know I've been a great daddy, but I also know I haven't been as present. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. And again, saying this to a 10-year-old, kind of looking at you like I'm weird, but I just hope one day that he'll go, my dad made a choice before his 40th birthday to completely change his life. And the eye of the universe is a funny place. The only seat in the cafe that was available, Archie's sort of sitting here in front of me, right over his shoulder, was a Celebrations bottle shop, So just funny little things. It's like so like reaching out to like as many people as I can, and there's still people who I'm yet to apologize to, or just to say thank you. I know you were trying. You had such an amazing impact on my life, and I didn't fucking see it because I was so consumed by my own suffering and being an alcoholic, in my opinion. So the doctor said it was a coping mechanism because I could have a gap, but I feel I was an alcoholic, and it just, the decision making, and just like I said to you, not being as present, because it's about, oh geez, I can't wait for a drink, rather than, oh my gosh, how amazing is it to be at the zoo here with my children. Like I spoke about this on SAS, but I see photos of me at the zoo with my son when he was younger, and I see me, I'm there, I'm in the photo, but I have no memory of it now, mate. Like, it's like I remember what my son wore to Currumbin Wildlife Park, 2 years ago or whatever it is. The same thing with my daughter. What I went through was really, really difficult. And to be honest, I wouldn't wish it on anyone else because it was very, very painful, right? And I caused a lot of pain. I say that again, I caused a lot of pain. And I only wish I could apologize more. But what I found is the best apology I can give is change, and quitting the booze, being more present. And even I've shared it on podcasts, but even for people who, aren't as sort of connected or dialed in or go, man, there's something different about you. Obviously, you're healthier, you've lost weight, your skin completely changes. But people come and go, man, you're doing, you're just different. Because I was always so jovial and so generous, I feel, to castmates and other people. But like the people, the aforementioned people like your Robin Williams, there was that sadness, there was that struggle. And then when that was triggered, you turn to booze, So sorry to crap on a lot, but I feel like it's essential to share that. So, and like some people, it's like once I've made a choice, this is the funny part with me. Once I've made a choice, it's done. So I made a choice, and I did a post on social media about sobriety and thanking some people that helped me get there. It was just very general, but they know who they are. There are people in the world that I still haven't been able to apologize to and thank, for all their help, in the way that I want, but, it was just, it was a slow moving boat. Like I would get on top of it for a while and then I'd go back to it and then I'd be great. And then this, and then I don't know, like I'm not a big, 40s approaching because I'm not an ageist person, but I remember kind of sitting there and I think it would have been my 39th birthday and I was out of shape. I was depressed. I was drinking. I was literally eating a pizza, which is fine. It's your birthday. But, I was just remember going, I'm not doing this for my next birthday, Not that the next, when I turn 40 is going to be a bit of extravaganza, but I was making real change. Again, for myself, first and foremost, because you cannot help or you cannot make amends or be better for other people unless you do the healing yourself, right? But also for the people in my life and in particular my children, So it was a slow moving boat, and you go in and out and in and out. And I feel sometimes with people like you and I, you kind of the moderation thing is something that taps on or the taps off. It's like with basketball. Obviously, if I'm playing a 3-on-3 game, it's a bit more chilled out. But when it's like my open men's comp that we played last night, that white line fever kicks in. I guarantee you're the same way. It's but that doesn't always work, especially when that is mixed with drinking and all that sort of stuff. So it feels like the podcast, we should call it I Digress or Dan Digresses. But when the decision was made, it was quick. But it took me far too long to get there, in my opinion. Again, I'm not a regrets person. I'm a lessons person. But I only regret it in the sense that I could have been better and shown up for my loved ones and people in my life far better. So the next, hopefully 60 years of my life, they get this version of me. And the guy that it's like the horror movies. They're horrible when you see the person in purgatory with the hook sticking out of them and they're getting pulled in different directions. That's kind of what I felt like. And, and using alcohol to cope with that. But I feel like now this next 60 years of my life, they get this whole different, it's the more true, authentic version of myself, not the guy who was led by suffering and alcohol and the pressure from the film industry and all that sort of stuff. It almost felt like, I said this to someone the other day, that it felt like someone else was wearing my skin. That sounds like I'm making an excuse, right? But it's not, because I own every single choice and mistake I made. But I am very much aware and can observe now from, I feel like almost a different person, what factors led up to that. And I don't punish myself for it anymore, because when I punish myself, that's when you go dark and then you're in that suffering victim mentality and you're no good to anyone. It's not acknowledging, it's not accepting or being better. But I feel like I'm in a place now where I have forgiven myself. I still think back to sometimes and I go, I could have done way better there. And that's why I've been trying to reach out to as many people as I could to apologize, because I do owe people apologies and to show them real change. And the funny thing is, it's like some people, it's like split second. Other people, it's like, okay, show me, which is great, because there's that accountability. It's not just because I've made this big shift and had this spiritual colonic, that's a new one for your podcast, I'm sure.
The spiritual colonic podcast, yeah.
on top of a waterfall. It was fresh water.
Well, they
No,
talk about sometimes the greater the sinner, the greater the
yes,
saint.
yes.
So it's
So,
interesting to
mm,
look at this process and
mm,
knowing you, I mean, you're a Gemini, you're an air sign, your mind doesn't stop. We can see you, you're fluid, the access to that information, which is obviously something really, the clarity they sometimes
mm,
talk about when you stop consuming those vices. We get very clear on
mm,
what our intentions are. And then, of course, we want to make sure we're letting everyone know what we're doing and then living up to that. So then we come back to this kind of pressure again. I mean, you've been in the film industry nearly 20 years of your life. The camera's
mm,
been on you. But I kind of feel like for me, the camera's always been on me since I was born. I was always aware. I was watching myself and judging myself and why wasn't this happening? And I wasn't good enough. And if only this happened and kind of having that sort of spiritual treadmill that you're
mm,
in charge of, that you're ramping it up sometimes just to prove that you're doing well enough. I mean, the fact that you can see this duality for
mm.
Dan, I mean, do you find now this sort of integration of the inner world and the outer world is a lot more kind of, in an alignment? Because you talk about your son, he's 10 now, and you've
Yeah.
got your daughter. So this responsibility, because I know for you, the eldest of four, and I know you had some challenges with your dad. So do you find there's any kind of responsibility that you need to show up in such a way to, I don't know, for atone for anything,
No,
but I don't wonder
absolutely.
there's
No,
not a pressure
no,
there.
absolutely, absolutely. And again, I try not to see it as like a atonement, more more an acknowledgement, because atoning for me, I found I was trying too hard. It's more just about adopting these processes and behaviors that best allowed me to cultivate the best version of myself. Um, but absolutely, like now I feel blessed because now I've got this opportunity and this clarity to now, if you want to call it, making it up to people, apologizing to people, or just being more of service to people. You know what I mean? And the funny thing is with me, I always saw myself as being of service. Like I try to help out other actors if I think they're perfect in other roles. And as you know, a lot of actors don't do that. They live with the scarcity mentality. Like I know actors, it's like if they know that if you and I are perfect for something, they won't send it to their mate. Go, hey, make sure your agents check this. Or if I'm already on a film, hey, John would be great for this. So many actors don't do that. So I always felt like I was being of service. But then in my own time, and then when your suffering kicks in, then it's glug glug glug, and you're not serving anyone. So it was definitely a slow moving boat. But again, just grateful for the opportunity to just reach out to as many people who I feel like I could have done better for and been better with. Like I said to you, everything from my children to my family, people I have close relationships with, just trying to reach out and say, hey, I acknowledge that I made those choices and they are my mistakes. I own them, but I want you to know that that is not the real version of me. That is a guy that was suffering and drinking way too much, and for that I'm sorry. And here's the new version, and I really want you in my life. I'm so grateful. I love you, but it's now it's up to you because I acknowledge my mistakes.
And you have been incredibly generous. I mean, I'm aware you've supported me and you've done some amazing things for me, and I know for other people. So not a lot of people know, like you're saying, how much you're giving back. And potentially at a time where you were struggling, it's often we're doing for others that we truly want to do for ourselves. So it's interesting sometimes to kind of build up that spiritual bank of going, well, I know I'm not doing the best, but at least I can show everyone else that I'm kind of on a good level of being seen that way. So, I mean, obviously what you're sharing now, and it's wonderful to see you're at a place, you've taken accountability. There's a certain sense, and obviously the next 20, 30, 40 years of your life and where that takes you. Are there certain kind of mantras, or are there certain philosophies that you adopt? I know for me, words are very powerful, and how
Mm,
much I use them for synchronicity.
yeah.
Did you find that there were certain words that kind of just held you or show you that you're, in an alignment with yourself?
100%. So I'm a big I am person. So words have so much power, as you know, and really understanding how the brain works and what that does with the neurochemicals, without getting too far into the weeds for everybody at home. But even just saying the words like I want, I want this, I want this, I want this, I need this, I need this. It puts you into a lower vibration, a vibration of scarcity. It's not here. So I always encourage this with young actors. I want this. It's okay to establish what you want, but become that person, take on those habits. So like I said to you, it's like for me to get to the next level, just as a father, as an actor, whatever it is, it's like you've got to take on new consistency, new habits, new cultures, new behaviors. But just to simplify it for everyone at home, just start catching yourself out. I want, I would love to is better than need and want, but there's nothing better than I am. I am an amazing podcast host. I have amazing guests flooding to me. I am a global movie star for the people acting. I am a leading man, whatever that is, right? It just raises that vibration. And then your brain starts, the part of your brain, your RAS, the reticular activating system, starts seeing all the pathways to that. But if you're in that negative state, I want, need, and whatever, it starts seeing more scarcity. Oh, the bank account's not doing well. Fucking agent hasn't sent me auditions, or that guy booked a job. But this, like, so really starting the morning by, like I said to you, listening to those amazing soundtracks that I grew up in with, and then really establishing my intentions. I've actually got 3 different journals, literally just behind the camera. I've got one for me and my career. I've actually got one that I do with my 3-year-old daughter. Now, don't get me wrong, she's a toddler, so some days it's not, but we talk about what she's grateful for. Obviously, kids, and I did this with Archie when I first started learning this, I would say something, okay, you can do one materialistic thing. So Archie, he loved getting little Matchbox cars. Nevaeh is obsessed with dancing, so she usually says dancing. But they're so amazing. Like these kids, they come out with stuff. It's like, Nevaeh said something the other day. She's just so grateful to have a mummy and daddy who loves her, or said something about her house and meeting like a little kid at her first dancing lesson. It's just amazing when you allow that childlike energy to flow through you. And obviously I had to get rid of a lot of other negativity to do that. Yeah, digression again, but yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Well, I was going to ask you, it's any thoughts or of advice, but you've been dropping these great pearls of wisdom, gratitude
Mm.
journal,
And the big
doing the
one,
right
sorry,
thing.
one more is change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. For me, that's most people associate that quote with Wayne Dyer, but it's from I think is it from it's someone whose name I can't pronounce. I know that. I think it's Pierre, someone Teilhard. I think it's a French philosopher. Please don't quote me on that. I didn't prep. I didn't prep that question. But changing your perspective on things, and that's just not woo-woo. Like Tony Robbins always says, it's not going out in the garden saying, there's no weeds, there's no weeds, there's no weeds. But it's changing your perspective actually changes your biochemistry, which is fascinating. So change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. There's always like even when I was going through the worst, there was the nugget of gold, right? Going through that rock bottom point I hit, and I'd hurt a lot of people, and I was, alienating them, isolating myself. I was not being the best version of myself I could, far from it, probably the worst version, right? But what it did is lead me to right here.
Yeah.
So that's worth going through that suffering. And like I said, everything all happening at once. But change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Sorry to interrupt you, man.
I was saying, well, it's interesting, you get a chance to kind of share this probably more than most. And so there's a self-reflection, asking about advices, but you've already said, learn that American accent, do the things you say you're going to do. So again, I can't really ask you to put any more in because you've been very forthcoming. And I think that's the generosity that you have now, the journey that you're on, as a father, as a man, being responsible, because you do have a platform now. People look at you and they can judge you. And I trust that when people, look at you today and realize you've been very honest about who you've been and in the past about sort of apologizing. I think sometimes we need to be accountable and not necessarily to like I said, to atone for anything, but just
I know exactly what you meant. Yeah.
that on our path, we're going to meet people and we talk about the vibrations and sometimes the worst things that we're going to have yield the greatest opportunities for growth. And sometimes those comforts or those really awesome things just keep us static because we don't need to grow. We don't need to evolve.
What's that saying? The comfort is the playground of the devil or something like that. There's something along those lines. And I was like thinking to myself, yeah, I've definitely been in that space, coming off a film and you just want to do nothing. But in the past, it'd be like doing nothing means like drinking bourbon by the pool or something like that. Now it was funny. I was just in Europe and it was my first sober flight, right? And Like, and again, first world problems, you're in a chair in the sky, but it was really interesting to me to go through that, and just little universal tests. Like I was at an event for a movie I was promoting, and the bartender recognized when he comes up with a shot. And this was early on in the sobriety journey. I think it was like 2 months in. And part of my brain for a split second went, "Oh, don't make him feel bad. Just do the shot." And then I really had to look at it, and I put it down and I said, "Brother, what's your name?" Shook his hand. I said, "I actually had a problem with alcohol, dude, and I don't drink anymore, but I'm so grateful that you brought this over." Had a chat to him about like where he knew me from, all that sort of stuff. I said, "Do you mind if I give this to someone else?" And it was fine. It was fine. It's like I don't know this Aussie, culture. It's like, oh, you're having a Diet Coke, which is my, let's call vices. I probably could knock off the Diet Coke a little bit, drink more water, but having your first sober Christmas or whatever, and even just like sharing it in places like this, I had sort of, I was very concerned. I had a lot of trepidation about how much do I share, but then the more I shared, the more feedback and people were reaching out, and the more service I could be. And that's why I went and got certified as a coach. The irony was, like, so I never monetized it, but just to have that authenticity of what I was talking about, I felt like I needed to do. But then, like I said, slow moving ship, it's like this. Like I was certified, I knew what I needed to do, but I'd go through a tough time and not make the changes. You feel like a phony, you start feeling worse, you start drinking more. That loop that I'm so grateful that I'm now out of. But it took rock bottom to do it, and the only regret is that whether it's hurting people or disappointing people, that truly do and did love me, it's like that's the biggest lesson, and just going, hey, I know, like he was a dick, but if there's any way I can make this up to you, you just let me know. But this is the
That
new
journey isn't, I
me.
mean, life's not that puzzle to solve,
No,
mystery to live. And this is
yeah,
just where you find yourself now. And
mm,
I'm proud of all that you've achieved. And it's interesting that you've come almost full circle now. You've got this kind of great life ahead of you, the life behind you, nothing but learnings and teachings and opportunities that everybody seems
mm,
to get what they need. Regardless, I talk about some of the things that happened in my life, but I look back now and realize, thank you. That was such a good lesson. Whether I did get
yeah,
something or I didn't get something was perfect for my evolutionary growth. So anybody that stands back and throws stones or criticizes or judges, of which I know I've been an incredibly, in the past criticizing and judging, which is why this journey of stepping into the world of
mm,
leadership and offering a platform and giving something back, because there's sort of nothing more left for me to kind of individually achieve. I
yeah,
think the only way forward now is to give back and to create the community and show that's, like what you're doing. There's probably a lot of people that can take away and say, well, hey, if this guy's admitting it and he's doing it, you just don't know how inspiring just a
mm.
simple conversation is. So henceforth, why, thank you so much for joining the channel today and being so honest and transparent. I
Oh
guess
mate, it's
yeah,
it's been it's
clarity.
been it's been amazing. All our conversations are like this. We just decided to record one.
Yeah, that's what I
Uh,
realized.
But
I've
it's
had great
fascinating. Like,
conversations. Yeah.
thank you, mate. And even with that judgment stuff, because we all do it. It's just our brains doing it, not demonizing yourself, because our brains want us to feel good, right? So we think judging people is like, so it's a split second thing we do. But as we get better at this work, and even just as we get older, and your perspective changes, usually with kids or experiences, don't demonize yourself for that judgment, but don't sit in it. If it's a split second, no, no, come on, mate. They're doing their best. Get out of here. As opposed to judging someone or what have you. Like I used to look at the Rock, for example, like, oh, he can't act. He's always got the same shirt on or whatever. But then speaking to Ken Jeong when we worked with him, it's like understanding what this man has created, this global brand. You know what I mean? And it's like you don't have to think. You can have your perspectives on the movies, acting, or whatever. But what about going? What an amazing thing this man has done to come from nothing, and the man had nothing, right? And to go and just this global movie star, and like, and he's worth billions now with obviously Project Rock, and and then gosh knows how many like endorsement deals and companies he has. But not demonizing yourself for judgment. I'm really glad you finished with that one because we've all done it. but it's about not doing it as much as we possibly can,
That's the
catching
work,
yourself out.
isn't
It's
it?
great.
And we just keep working, and people sometimes don't see how
Mm.
much work is done behind the scenes because
Oh,
all they're doing is seeing a product. It's
yeah.
easy to, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that. You're very easy as a recognizable, and like I said, working with some of those iconic figures.
Mm.
And the wonderful thing is seeing not only the body of work, but the identity that they own. And
Yeah.
sometimes going, man, I really like that guy. He may not be the best actor, but he's on a journey and he's sharing. And like I said, being on set, having all of those moving parts seamlessly working together, that's the beauty of creativity, that it's a tapestry. And all
Yeah.
of those stitches that make up a life, let alone, we don't know what somebody else is dealing with. So the
Mm.
kindness, the compassion, the self-love, just being accountable. And I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I hate you. I never want to talk to you again. Okay,
Yeah.
I get
And the
it.
thing, and I'm sorry I made a mistake, but what I've learned, it's like, and it's going to sound so simple, but like actually changing, actually doing the thing you're saying sorry for, not just to get oh, it's okay, like actually doing the work every single day, creating that, and that just becomes your life. We talked about it before. You want to go to a different place, well, then start adopting the beliefs, habits, and behaviors and actions of that future version of yourself. You're not just going to be like all of a sudden, you win the lottery and they say, okay, we want you to be Thor, but you smoke a pack a day and you're a bit out of shape and you're 5'7". No, but if you want to achieve a certain level, it's like the discipline. And like you talked about, what Kobe Bryant's one I always talk about my kids that I coach. It's like, oh, I know how to do that layup. I know how to shoot that shot. It's like, Kobe Bryant wouldn't move spots. He was one of these basketball psychos, that JJ Redick's term, that would shoot 1,000 shots, 500 shots from one spot, like an elbow jump shot or something like that. So for everyone else, it's not the 3-point line. It's a little bit further in where the foul line, where the foul shots get taken from. But it's like that level. If you want to be at that level, do what he does. LeBron James spends $1 million on his recovery alone a year, probably more. And now he's my age, 40, playing in the NBA, and he's still one of the best players on the planet at 40. But what does he do? Like he literally gets to the game 5 hours before the game, 5 hours, and he's LeBron James. I'm sure there's plenty of other stuff he could be doing, but
There's all
that's the
those
process
debates, yeah, of
he's
who's who in the
adopted.
zoo and comparisons. So I think at the end of
Yeah.
the day, stay in your lane, whether you're an amazing mum or dad, or you've got a job.
Mm,
I think it's showing up every day, giving your best. And I think if there is that sense of something to find, that to
mm,
me is the most important work now, is not to make the world a better place, but be the change that you wish to see in the
big
world. And,
time.
and
It
I think
goes
that's, yeah.
here, it goes, so for everyone, it goes here, it goes here, out, so I'm pointing at my heart. It really does go from you out. And there's all not to go too far, but you can literally see aura and energy. There are cameras that can pick it up. There's studies, there's science behind this stuff. So it's got to go out, so be the change. I like you
We're
finishing with
sending it
that. It's
out,
great.
and we're going to put this out to the world. So Dan, thank you so much.
Yeah. And
Loved our conversation. We could just keep going.
yeah, we should stop people have lives. But thank you, mate. And again, this is so funny, given your Facebook post about just being nervous about posting and looking at this amazing platform you're creating. And I just hope everybody at home really connected with this conversation and got something out of it. And even if only just one person did, I'm stoked. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, amazing. So thank you, Dan, and thank you for joining us on the Strong, Happy, Healthy Love podcast. My name's John Reynolds. We look forward to seeing you on the next one. Please leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content. And much love and kindness. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you, Dan.
Cheers.
Bye, folks.